That was inspiring, it was invigorating, it was everything we all knew it would be. Thank you so much, President Carter. You know, I knew I was going to have to prepare for this interview, and I knew that your books would be great source material, but even I had no idea how many books there were. 31 books, 32 just released last week, and President Carter is too modest to hawk it himself, so I'm urging you all to buy a copy of Faith, A Journey for All. And you were on a book tour, you've been on Stephen Colbert, that also was very intimidating. A friend sent me Colbert's interview, and anyway, I was intimidated. Before we dive deeply into the source material here, I wonder if I can ask you to reflect a little more personally on the power of proximity. You've just talked about how proximate we all are, how we have to learn to live in peace with one another. But you started your political career actually banging on individual doors. You started your campaigns by actually going door to door. You and Mrs. Carter, I don't think, maybe people didn't know when they saw that image of you walking down Pennsylvania Avenue that you were the first presidential couple to leave the armored car and walk down Pennsylvania to the White House with the people. So can you, isn't that amazing? Isn't it amazing? A tradition that continues to this day. But can you just talk a little bit about the people you've been proximate to who have really influenced your life? Where did an idea like getting out of the armored limousine come from?
Well, actually from a senator who made that suggestion for a different reason. He thought I ought to demonstrate that I could walk that far as a symbol of masculine exercise.
Oh, okay. And Mrs. Carter was probably a little ahead of you?
She was. But I have to say that nowadays, that would be quite an achievement for me to walk that.
Oh, I think you're up to it.
But anyway, what we found, as was quoted, I think, on the screen, I couldn't hear it all, but when we have been to build habitat houses, which we've done now every year for 35 years, for poor people in need, who never have had a chance to own a decent home. We have, or when we've eliminated guinea worm, I've done other things for poverty-stricken people, we have found, as I said in the screen already, that they are just as intelligent, just as hardworking, just as family values are just as good as ours. And we tend to underestimate people that are poorer than we are, or who are different from us. And nowadays, I would say that the discrimination against people who are different has been elevated above what it was 15 years ago or so, with the animosity against immigrants, and not only in Europe, but also in the United States with verbiage. And also the alienation of women is still going on. I had a lot more statistics I was going to do, but I want to cut my talk short to get to this, but also to get home tonight. So these I think we have a great opportunity ahead of us of excitement and satisfaction of life and purpose in life and accomplishment as we reach out to people who are different from us and find how wonderful they are and how much they can add to our own lives. So every time we thought that we were sacrificing ourselves to take on some task of that kind, we found that we got more benefit out of it than we ever thought we would.
I am sure that's true. And speaking of, as you were talking about living in peace, and of course, peace has been signature work for you. Your presidential term in office was dramatically free of any conflict, so a remarkable achievement in itself. But in talking about weapons, as you did, it triggered in my mind the Parkland students and the traumatic experience,
Yes.
and how that has just galvanized them and may just be seeding a new movement in this country against gun control.
I hope so.
Yeah.
In the new book, by the way,
Uh-huh.
I describe the deleterious effect of a National Rifle Association and the succumbing by almost every legislator in America, at least a majority of them, not only in this federal government, but also in the state and local governments, to the National Rifle Association. And our country is plagued with excessive firearms and the use of them. So we've seen that demonstrated, and I think the Parkland students' commitment and all, I hope will be permanent, and they'll stick with it, and they'll convince their parents to vote against people who don't comply with doing away with the weapons, and that when they get old enough, they'll vote that way as well. So I hope we don't give up on that.
No, I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to just do what others have not been able to do. Many people watching the film will have noticed the woman at your side, Rosalind, your wife of nearly 73 years now. I can't resist telling the story of how you first met. President Carter's mother, Miss Lillian, remarkable woman, a professional nurse, delivered a baby, helped deliver a baby in a hospital. And then as a working mom, as she checked in on the baby, she brought her three-year-old son with her to meet the baby. So that baby was Eleanor Rosalind Smith.
That's right.
So at 3 years old,
I met my future wife.
he was smitten. He was smitten. A remarkable love story. A remarkable.
We've been together pretty close ever since.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that? But I wonder if you tell us a little bit about Miss Lillian. Your passion for women's rights, for equity between the sexes, doesn't come from nowhere. I mean, you go through all the data with us, you go through the reasoning, but I happen to know there have been some very strong influences in your life. So can you talk to us a little bit about Miss Lillian?
Well, one of the most fortunate things that ever happened to me was growing up in a neighborhood that didn't have any white neighbors. All our neighbors, all my playmates, everybody who took care of me, women were African American. My mother was a registered nurse, and she nursed 20 hours a day and was supposed to get paid $6 for that. She would get home at night at 10 o'clock, and she would go back on duty at 2 o'clock in the morning. So as a teenager and so forth, I never saw my mother hardly. She was always working. And so Mother didn't pay any attention to racial segregation, which was permeating throughout our country then. This was back in the 20s and 30s. And so my mama was a full-time nurse, and then later after my daddy died, she was house mother for a few years in Auburn, Alabama, Auburn University. And then Mother was watching the TV one day, and it said they wanted volunteers in the Peace Corps, and age is no limit. So Mother volunteered for the Peace Corps. The only thing she asked for was to go to a poor country that had dark-skinned people. So they sent her to India, and she was ordained to work there for 2.5 years. One of the things that Mama did was she became an untouchable because she took care of helping people with medicines and cleaning her own floors and things of that kind. And she worked in a very wealthy neighborhood owned by wealthy people, the Godrej family. The gardener of the Godrejes loved my mother, and he gave her secretly, without telling the Godrejes, he gave her vegetables and flowers. And he told my mother that he had 2 children. One was a boy and one was a girl. And that the boy was going to school, but he couldn't afford the girl to go to school. So Mother, in order to repay him, the gardener, taught the girl how to read and write and about the outside world. And later we were over in India just a few years ago to build 100 homes for Habitat. And the Godrej family, very wealthy, since I was a former president, they invited all of the folks in to meet me and Rosen. and about 100 people who had known my mother. And so the paperback book volume of my mother's letters were there, and the picture on the front was mother sitting on a rock with a little girl. And so I asked the go-to register, where is the little girl now? And they said, she's here. So she stood up, and I said, how you doing now? She said, fine. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm the president of a university. So mother was a member of the medical profession, being a nurse, so she was able to pay no attention to the mores and customs at that time to distinguish between African Americans and black and white people. So I was heavily affected by my mother, I would say.
You clearly
It was one of the best things that ever happened to me when I was getting ready to run for office, because I was able to get Andrew Young and all of Daddy King's family, to help me. And I couldn't have done it had it not been for my mama.
Well, Miss Lillian was 68 when she joined the Peace Corps. It was amazing, amazing. But you brought up these, growing up in the deeply segregated South, and I wonder if you'd reflect on an experience you had when you were 12 years old. You wrote a poem about it. We only saw it vaguely then, but we were transformed at that place. A silent line was drawn between friend and friend, race and race.
That's right. Yes, I had two African-American friends with whom I worked in the field. And we were coming out of the field one day, and we went through what we called a pasture gate went into the barn. And my friends stepped back to let me go first. I thought it was a tripwire there that I would fall down or something like that. But I went through first. And I couldn't understand until I was an adult what happened. But I presumed then that their parents had told them that we had reached the age where they now had to treat me with deference. But as I said also in the first part of that poem, the thing that distinguished between us as far as rank was concerned was who had caught the biggest fish, or could run the fastest, or jump the highest, or who could pick the most cotton in one day. That was the way we, set our scale. But that remained constant with me. And it was not until I was a submarine officer when in 1948, Harry Truman, about 7 years before Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King came on the scene, Harry Truman ordained as commander-in-chief that there was an end to all segregation in the military forces, all the civil service. So he was very courageous, and he lost the South because of that. But he was my number one hero among all the presidents I've known.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. You referenced in your remarks, you referenced a speech you made in Oslo. Of course, we know that speech was for the Nobel Peace Prize, and you were asked to name, at the time, the world's biggest challenge, and you chose economic disparity. You've since decided that that disparity between the two genders, between women and men, is the greatest challenge. But economic disparity has only grown far greater since that time, President Carter. And so it seems to me that that's still a pretty significant challenge. Do you think we can solve that challenge?
In the United States, we can't solve it until we change the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact,
you're talking about the case.
And that income disparity works to the disadvantage of a lot of things. For instance, prisoners. When I listened to Brian speak a few minutes ago, I was impressed with the fact that when I left the White House, there was one person in America in 1,000 who were in prison. Now there are 7.5 people per 1,000, so more than 7 times as many people are now in prison as when I left the White House in 1981. And our Attorney General now says he's going to increase that number.
I didn't want to talk about politics.
I know.
Really. I wanted to talk about
I'm sorry.
you. Thank you. Thank you. But now you've made this transition to thinking the greatest challenge on earth is this discrepancy, this disparity, this discrimination against women and girls. And I wonder if I could put you on the spot and ask you if you think that equality in leadership in the world, if we had more women in positions of power and influence, political power and influence, as well as economic power and influence, if we'd have a better shot at peace.
I don't think there's any doubt that as far as peace agreements are concerned, the women will be much more inclined to preserve the peace than men are. The women quite often suffer more than the men during a wartime. And I think that's one of the basic human rights, is to be able to live in peace. And we've had an occasion, for instance, in South Sudan, when John Garang was head of it, when we first got started in South Sudan, where the women, including his wife, took the leadership and they worked out a peace agreement. All of it hasn't lasted, but we've had forums at the Carter Center since we started working on gender discrimination with women who have come from Pakistan and other places that have been involved in peace agreements. And there's no doubt in my mind that a woman is naturally inclined more toward peace than a man is. So yes, I think we can move toward peace if women get more and more positions in parliaments and more positions as president. I'm not talking about any particular election in the United States, but there's no doubt about that.
Well, there are many, many, many more women running for office than has ever been true in history in the U.S.
In both parties, as a
yes,
matter of
yes,
fact.
yes. So that's encouraging.
It is encouraging.
That's encouraging. Many people know about your work, about your achievements, your presidential achievements, your achievements as founder of the Carter Center, but you have a really wide range of interests. You're an avid fly fisherman, you paint, you write poetry, you build furniture, you started downhill skiing when you were in your 60s, you hike, you have an extraordinary range of interests. Is there one of these passions or pleasures that you return to that really renews your spirit?
Well, one of the things that Rosa and I have tried to do is to give each other plenty of space to do our own things we want to, but to try to find ways that we can do things together. And so we've done that, I would say, at least since I've been 35 or 40 years old. And so, yes, we learned how to downhill ski together for the first time. I was 62, she was 59. And we've learned how to be bird watchers. We now have more than 1,300 species of birds on our list. And we avid fly fishers. We've fished in almost all over the world. And still, we're going to Mexico in the end of this month, as a matter of fact, to fish for bonefish and permit. So we try to find things to do together. But I do my own painting. I'm painting now a thing that'll be used by a Christmas card at the Carter Center this coming year. Aww. I'm struggling with it, and
what's the image?
Well, the image is going to be a cardinal birds with snow falling, which is difficult for me. I haven't seen much snowfall
Not
in
in
South
Atlanta, yeah.
But I've seen a lot of cardinals. So the cardinals are going to be good. The snow is not going to be good. So we try to find ways to do things, and I've enjoyed building furniture, and just doing things with my own skills. And Rosen obviously is better than I am in most things. But we've learned how to get along with each other.
You have 73 years is
well, it's 72 years. I made a mistake this morning.
72
years.
Okay, 72 years. Yes, yeah. And I don't think she'd want you to, to exaggerate just yet. So, do you have a fish story for us? Is there one that got away on one of those fly fishing trips?
Well, I have so many that got away I couldn't even think about all of them. But Rosen quite often catches more fish than I do. I'm a much better fisherman than she is, but she's luckier than I am.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Last question, President Carter. Shortly after the inauguration last year in the US, I remember having a conversation with Phil Wise, who's here. And Phil, of course, has been with you for a good long time, 23 odd years at the Carter Center. But Phil was also your Sunday school student at the age of 12. And
Phil's father was my best friend.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
true.
wonderful. Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, anyway, Phil assured me of your belief and his belief that the institutions of the American democracy were strong, that they were resilient, and that they would hold. It gave me a great deal of comfort. I believe that too. Yeah. But I wondered, you know, as we are seeing all over the world the institutions of democracy being tested, as we're seeing the rise of nationalism, populist movements, and strongmen, I wonder if you're still as confident.
Well, I still have faith. That's why I wrote the book. My publishers were very concerned about the lack of faith around the world in a lot of things that we treasured in the past. Democracy, freedom, the benefit of telling the truth, you know, things like that are now shaken. And so I still have faith in the great United States and my own country and my own people. In the past, we've overcome some very terrible challenges successfully, getting our independence when it was very doubtful, and ending slavery, when it was very doubtful, giving women the right to vote, and so forth, sometimes belatedly, but we've always been successful. And I think we have overcome the ravages of the Great Depression and the Second World War. Eleanor Roosevelt, our former First Lady, was one of the key drafters and authors of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So I think that inherently America is very strong. We are kind of a mosaic of heterogeneity. People come to the United States from all over the world, and a lot of them who come, and I would presume that some of their genes are carried down, come as adventurers. They try new things. They win prizes from the Skoll Foundation for entrepreneurship and so forth. So I would say that because of our past history of difficulties, sometimes belatedly overcoming them successfully, and the makeup of our society, and the innovation that the United States has shown in being world leaders, I think that we will prevail, yes. So I gave you a long, rounding answer, but I think we'll prevail.
It was the right answer.
I have faith in America.
And we have faith in you. Right. We have faith in the principles and the integrity of your leadership. We have faith in all the people who are taking that inspiration with them today into the world. And before we conclude, we get you back to Atlanta, because I know you have a very big gathering of friends at the Carter Center that you want to be there for. I want everybody to know that Jimmy Carter is the first American to receive the Skoll Global Treasure Award, and I think you know why.
Oh. I love you. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless you.